team is Tampa Bay.
Can you believe what you're seeing?
This is not the way the script was written.
Seattle, who I think probably is the best team.
It's the fourth takeaway they've gotten today. You just can't win that way.
Probably those two teams, Seattle and the Bucs.
Oh, my gosh. They threw you under the bus, guys. At least you still have your own Lowe's home studio. At least you still have that.
Here in this Lowe's home studio. All right, so that was then, and this is now, okay? Let's have a redo on that one, Mike, because this week, I think that the Saints are the best team in the NFC. When you watch that game against the Bucs last week, I was saying to myself, I don't know if anybody could have beaten them in that given Sunday, right?
That day.
And they look terrific on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, and really in the kicking game, too. And they got Michael Thomas back. He wasn't even utilized all that much. But when you look at their schedule going forward, you know, Atlanta twice, and Denver, and the Eagles, and Vikings, the only game they won't be favored is Kansas City. Right. They might be 7-1, the back nine, okay? And so you're talking about another possible 13-3 season for the Saints, Mike. How about you?
Yeah, Coach, and I like the Saints, too, man. They've done some great things. And they're going to get better because they will work, Mike, to get that win and working in Mike Thomas, I think, is big. But I like the Packers, too, now. I like the Packers, and the Packers actually beat your Saints in Week 3, Coach. They beat the Saints 37-30, which was a great game. I know people will say the Saints didn't have Michael Thomas, and I'll give you that, but the Packers didn't have this guy that I talked to later. They didn't have Devontae Adams in that game. But what's interesting, too, it was a battle of those two great quarterbacks and how close those two guys played. You know, Aaron Rodgers had 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in that game. Drew Brees had 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in that game. Now, they both will have their star receivers next time, but I like the Packers also.
I will not fall for the banana in the tailpipe, right? They set you guys up. They're going to use that against you next week. What I'm going to say is what we've come to realize in the NFC is that it really depends on matchups, right? We've seen Tampa Bay beat Green Bay, and then we've seen Green Bay beat New Orleans, and then we've seen New Orleans beat Tampa Bay. And so much when it comes to playoff time, we don't have one dominant NFC team. It's going to come down to who do you get matched up against? If it's a physical team, how do the Packers match up against a physical team? Saints may be the best team in terms of playing finesse or playing physical, but Tampa Bay, they can come out and out-physical you, and we believe by the end of the year with all those weapons, that they'll be able to out-finesse you or attack you offensively as well. But right now, I mean, we saw it last week. Oh, yeah, it's going to be this team and this team. Well, we have no idea with the NFC right now because anybody can get beat by anybody, especially at the top of the mix.
Can I just say this, though? I think we missed something right quick. No, Kurt, that's pretty cool, Kurt. Thank you for wearing your salute to service.
Yes, sir.
Tie and hanky, man. That's beautiful right there, Kurt.
That's a beautiful thing. Good job.
That's a beautiful thing, but I got to get that in.
Let's go back to Rich, okay?
Let's go to Rich.
Yes, I can't wait to see next week's home studio to see just how wrong you just were right there. This season, the Lowe's home team is going to bring 32 players from every team across the league together to support community building projects that highlight the cultural fabric of their respective hometowns. This week, Lowe's home team co-captain Christian McCaffrey, Lowe's and the Panthers announced plans for a new lounge at Veterans Bridge Home, which helps veterans around the Carolinas who are seeking housing, jobs, and resources. The VBH lounge is expected to be complete by mid-January. Good stuff right there. Panthers getting ready to take on the Buccaneers today. Week 2 is when Christian McCaffrey hurt himself, came back last week, but he's not going to be in this week. Hurry-up offense, however, will be installed when we come back.
Lowe's Home Studio is brought to you by Lowe's. We put the home
on Prime Video.
Yep, Kenny Galladay's out again, but Jerry Jeudy with his shoulder expected to go. He just had a dynamite game against Atlanta. Kay Adams is going to join us in a moment to discuss more sleepers this week. Deebo Samuel and Laviska Shenault, they're both out. Ian Rappaport, let's talk about who's coming back. What do you have for me?
Nick Chubb, the bell cow running back for the Cleveland Browns and someone who emerged as one of the best runners in the NFL before he sprained his MCL. is going to be back on the field today for the Browns, going to get the bulk of the carries and resume his status as their bell cow. Kareem Hunt expected to come off the bench and spell him. My understanding, Rich, is Nick Chubb looked great in practice. Of course, he has been ahead of schedule with his injury. All systems go for Cleveland. Meanwhile, another big-time running back that is coming back after missing a couple games, this time with a high ankle sprain. Kenyon Drake, who had been the starter for the Arizona Cardinals, I am told he is expected to play today. They're going to watch him in warm-ups, see how he is, just to determine how significant of a role, but he should end up splitting carries today in Arizona.
All right, Ian, stay right there. We've got more show. Obviously, 3+ hours to go, but it's our first time we say good morning to Kay Adams and talk some sleepers for Week 10 fantasy-wise. Who do you have for us, Kay?
Yeah, a lot of stud running backs on bye weeks this week, Rich. So let's start with J.D. McKissick. We know Alex Smith likes to check down to his running back, and he did last week. 14 targets for McKissick. That's crazy. No one gives up more fantasy points to RBs than the Lions. That's the matchup for today. They coughed up 8 touchdowns to the position over the last 3 weeks, including 3 receiving scores. McKissick's involved in the passing game. Antonio Gibson has a role here, but I like McKissick if you can't play guys like Todd Gurley, Allaire, or Zeke all on bye. At wide receiver, do not sleep on John Brown. He gets to face the team that drafted him in the desert in what should be a really high-scoring affair. We told you here on Game Day Morning to play him last week. He racked up 8 catches for 99 yards. If Patrick Peterson's busy hanging out with Stephon Diggs all day, and I think he will, I like Brown's chances to put up some numbers. Get excited to fire him up and Josh Allen here in Week 10. And I'll give you another running back since all those studs are on a bye this week. Over the last 3 weeks, Leonard Fournette has outplayed, outproduced, and outsnapped Ronald Jones. Lenny, as I like to call him affectionately, he put up 100 rushing yards and his only 2 touchdowns of the entire season in their first matchup against the Panthers. That was back in Week 2. I just think, Rich, Brady wants to bounce back. He's going to do it as only he can. It is hard for me to see Leonard Fournette staying out of the end zone in this one. I hate chasing touchdowns, but here we are.
Those are 3 sleepers right there. Let's stack them up now. You're stacking who in your daily lineup today?
It's wild to think that 10 weeks ago, Mooch was fake drinking syrup out of a bottle. Here we are in Week 10. Here's the deal. A lot of people are going to go for Green Bay, a one-sided stack. Play Aaron Jones, play Devontae Adams. That's great against the Jags. A lot of people are liking the Bills and the Cards. I'm going to look, though, at the Seahawks and the Rams. Yes, Seahawks, I'm sorry. Until you prove me otherwise, I'm going to keep exploiting you in daily fantasy. How about Jared Goff? He has a breakout spot coming today. He's coming off a bye week. He's rested. They're going to scheme this up, and he's a way better value than Russell Wilson on the other side. Cooper Kupp saw 21 targets before that bye against Miami in Miami. I think you zig and run it back with Tyler Lockett, too, while everybody else zags and goes with the flashy guy in DK Metcalf.
All right. Thanks very much, Kay. We'll see you back later on in the show with Fantasy Plays of the Day. That's Kay Adams right here on NFL Game Day Morning with her expert fantasy advice. Speaking of fantasy, one day, Tom Pelissero will have an assignment in Miami. Today is not that day. It is not that day. Davante Adams will go one-on-one with Michael Irvin, but once again, we join Tom Pelissero in the inclement Midwest weather. Tom?
Well, Rich, injuries to Davante Adams and others aside, the only major blip for this Packers offense this season came 4 weeks ago in a blowout loss to Tampa Bay. Jaguars linebacker Joe Schobert, a Wisconsin native, told me players really dug into that Tampa